Hey guys, what's up? It's Shelby and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another Mystery Monday video. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into this case. Today we're going to be talking about the Cabin 28 murders. This case is still unsolved as far as I know. I know there's been a lot of good breaks in the case in like the last couple years or so, but we'll get more into that. But let's go ahead and talk about the people involved in this case. So we have Sue Char. She was known to be kind of her quiet, kind of kept to herself, but she was very, very kind. And she had 5 children. Her oldest being John, who was 15, Sheila, who was 14, Tina, who was 12, and she had 2 younger sons, Greg and Rick. They lived in Connecticut at this time, and Sue's husband was very, very abusive to her, and it was just not a good situation for her to be in. She had thought about leaving a whole bunch of times before they actually moved, but you know, after 5 kids, she finally realized that it was time to move, and so they moved. In 1980, they moved all the way from Connecticut to California. They moved to the Keddie area. She decided that this would be a good place because her brother actually lived in the Keddie area, so she, you know, had some family there. She felt like she had some support there. She didn't just move somewhere where she didn't know anybody. Keddie is just north of Sacramento, and it is a beautiful wooded area. And of course, when they moved, they didn't really have a whole lot of money to, you know, get their own house or apartment or anything like that. So they actually stayed in a trailer by her brother, like by where her brother lived. He had an extra trailer, and they all kind of crammed into this trailer for a while until their mother, you know, got enough money to rent this cabin in the Keddie Resort in the rural Sierra Nevada community of Keddie. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Alright, so April 11th, 1981. Sheila was actually going to go stay the night across the street at a friend's house, the Seabolt family. There was a girl about Sheila's age that, you know, lived over there, and they were good friends, so she was going to spend the night over there. So Sue stayed home with her 3 other kids, which would be Tina, Rick, and Greg. And John ended up coming home with a friend named Dana, and they ended up staying at the house that night too. Rich and Greg actually had their friend Justin Smart over that night as well. The next morning on April 12th at about 7 a.m., Sheila woke up from her sleepover and decided to walk home. And when she walked home, she walked into a gruesome scene. She found the bodies of John, Dana, and her mother Sue in the living room. She went upstairs, and the 3 boys were untouched, but Tina was nowhere to be found. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the crime scene and what happened. So if this turned your stomach, I would just skip ahead a little bit, but I am going to go into detail of what kind of happened at this crime. There was blood all over the walls, and there is no way that these 3 boys slept through this at all. The boys were upstairs asleep and had no idea what was going on downstairs, but there was no way this was a quiet crime. I mean, there was blood everywhere. There was 3 of them. There had to have been some kind of commotion going on downstairs that the boys would have heard. They were all bound by electric wiring, and they found a bent steak knife, a hammer, and they also found a butcher's knife that was covered in blood. The knife is said to have been bent from blunt force, which means that this was definitely a rage. If you are stabbing somebody so hard that you actually bend a steak knife, that just screams anger. Sue was found laying on her side on the sofa in the living room. She was naked from the waist down, and she had a blue bandana in her mouth. Her throat was slit, and she had a stab wound to the chest. John was also cut in the throat as well. Dana had blunt force trauma to her head, and they all had evidence of some kind of trauma to their head. They were all have said to have been hit in the head with this hammer that was found. There was also an unknown fingerprint that was found coming up the stairs to the door outside on the hand railing. Their phone was left off the hook, and the blinds were closed and the lights were off. And like I said, the 3 boys that were upstairs, didn't have any harm to them at all. And they don't really remember anything of that night. They pretty much just said that they slept through it. So Justin Smart's mom, Marilyn, had said that she found a jacket downstairs that had supposedly belonged to Tina that was covered in blood. She said she told this to the police, but the police have no evidence of her ever bringing this jacket in or even telling them about it. Justin Smart's dad, Martin, also said that he was missing a hammer out of his garage, and the Smarts only lived just down the road, so it could have easily, been the hammer that was found at the crime scene. Let's talk about Justin Smart's dad, Martin, really quick. He was very quick to give the police clues and evidence, and he just bombarded the police with information and all of this stuff, but he kind of gave too much information and it made the police very suspicious. He was almost trying to push the suspicion away from himself, but he was kind of pulling them in. The detectives interviewed pretty much everybody in this community, and the first people they started with were the Seabolts that lived across the street. So they had said that they saw a green van at the Smarts' house, but a lot of other people that they interviewed said it was a brown car, and some of them even mentioned that it had a flat tire. They tried to interview the boys, but like I said, they slept through it and they didn't know a thing about this until the morning that they found the bodies. They actually took Justin in and put him into a hypnosis to try to see if they could uncover any subconscious memories of what had happened that night, and it worked. Justin claims that the three boys were up in their room watching TV and getting ready to go to sleep when they heard some noise downstairs. He said that he saw Sue with two unknown men. One of them was tall, about 6 foot, and he had blonde, long hair. The other one was a bit shorter and had greasy black hair. He said one of them had a mustache and the other one was clean shaven, and they both wore glasses. And they were said to be anywhere between their late 20s and early 30s. Justin claims that John and Dana got home and they started a fight with the two other men that were there. He said Tina came into their room for a second but was taken out by one of the men and then was taken right out of the house. And Tina is said to be abducted from this crime scene and taken elsewhere. The FBI was actually involved in her missing persons case, and they brought in helicopters and dogs to search this whole area, but they didn't find a trace of Tina. That was until almost 3 years later, on April 22nd, 1984, when an anonymous tip came in saying they might know where Tina's body is. They went to this location and they found the skull of Tina, and this was actually found 50 miles away from the crime scene in a whole different county. They also found near her skull, they found a child's blanket, a blue nylon jacket, a pair of Levi's jeans with one of the back pockets missing, and an empty surgical glove dispenser. So this is pretty much all the evidence that they have for this case. Now let's talk about the main suspect in this case, being Martin Smart, Justin's dad, and his roommate, John Bobetti. So during this investigation of Martin and his roommate, the police actually found that Martin had a history of abuse towards his wife, Marilyn. And I guess that Sue was kind of talking to Marilyn on how to leave and coaching her that it's a great idea, that she needs to get out of this environment, because if you remember, Sue was actually in kind of the same situation and got away from it. So she was trying to give Marilyn a boost to kind of, get her going and tell her, the benefits of it and, why it was so bad, and trying to coach her to leave. Now, when Martin found this out, he was absolutely enraged. He was so mad at Sue for getting into their business like that, and he definitely went ballistic and, totally went off the deep end pretty much. Another odd thing about Martin is that right after the murders happened, he skipped town to go to Reno, Nevada. And then they started looking into his roommate, John Bobetti. John Bobetti was actually an ex-con and said to have been an accomplice in this murder. They believed that there was definitely more than one person involved in this murder because just all of the evidence and the way the crime scene was, and to kill 3 people and abduct 1 person all in this time without anybody knowing and noticing would be kind of hard to control. 3 adults, you know what I mean? It's more likely that there was an accomplice in this that more than likely have taken Tina. They were also pretty confused to why they left the boys upstairs. But if you remember, Justin Smart, the boy's friend, is Martin's son. So they figured that he didn't want to scare his son, he didn't want to kill his son, so he left the 3 boys upstairs. And to me, this makes so much sense. To have him, like I said, he was completely outraged at Sue for doing this, for, you know, trying to get her to leave, and he was obviously already a violent person. And you know what I mean? And it's like he would have had somebody else come in and take Tina, and maybe John and Dana walked in on Bobetti and Martin doing something to Sue. Maybe that was his main target, and then Dana and John came in and he had no other choice but to kill them as well and take Tina away, because maybe Tina didn't see as much as John and Dana did. And that would explain, you know, maybe Bobetti took Tina and fled, and Martin stayed to carry out these brutal murders. And that is also why he left the boys upstairs untouched. Because more than likely, if this was just a home invasion, a lot of serial killers don't want to leave any witnesses, and those boys would have been witnesses because they would have heard everything downstairs. So if it really was just a crime of, you know, just there's all these people in here, you know, and this person pulled up and decided to kill all these people, they would have killed the 3 boys that were upstairs as well. A lot of people think this is a cover-up on the police, because even after all of this investigation, Martin and Bobetti were never taken in or arrested. There has not been another arrest in this case at all. The people in Keddie County really believe that the police covered this up and kind of just threw it under the rug pretty much. It is said anyways that the sheriff at the time, his name was Doug, that him and Martin were actually really close friends, and that just kind of, I don't know. But Doug did actually say that he didn't know Martin like that at all. They weren't friends or anything like that, but he had also said that Martin and Marilyn came to him for marriage counseling, but he wasn't a counselor, he was a sheriff. And I feel like if you're gonna tell somebody about your marriage, it would be somebody that you are close to. In 2001, Dana's dad actually spoke out about pretty much what the police were doing. He said the police screwed up this whole case. They were putting facts over each other, and they were just stumbling over each other, and they just didn't do their job correctly pretty much. They were just throwing all this stuff around, and they were just very messy about it, and you know, didn't take it too seriously, even though this was a serious crime. And even Dana's dad said that he believes that this murder was definitely covered up by somebody in the investigation team. So years have passed, and in 2013 a new sheriff was appointed to Keddie County, and he reopened up this case, and he found a lot of stuff that was never mentioned in the original case file, that was publicized. He found a lot of stuff that was kind of just pushed away. While he was reorganizing this case and reading it all out and reading everything that they had already found, he found something that was never mentioned. he found a letter from Martin to Marilyn, and I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna quote it off for you guys, so I'm gonna be looking down. I paid the price for your love, and now that I bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through. Great. What else do you want? Marilyn claims that she never got this letter, but it was definitely Martin's handwriting. And let's go back to the tip really quick that said that they might know where Tina's body is. I feel like the person who killed all these people definitely called that tip in, because they stated her name like, they're like, I think I know where Tina is. It wasn't like somebody called in and said, hey, there's something odd going on, like I think, you know, I saw something laying here, whatever. He specifically said, I think I know where Tina is, and gave them the exact spot where they found Tina's skull. So the person who called in definitely was the person that did it, and maybe it was Bo Betty and he was getting nervous and like was, you know, let everything sink in and realized that, oh my god, we really did this, like, and was feeling guilty and called it in so that, you know, Tina wouldn't be missing, they would know that she was murdered. And maybe he wanted those 2 to be found so he could just get it off of his conscience, is kind of what a lot of people believe. And this tip was never analyzed. It was never traced to the person who called in. It was never anything like that. The voice thing was never analyzed. Nothing was done with this tip. It was literally just put in a box and like shoved under a desk. Like, it was just thrown away like nothing. And Martin's therapist in Reno actually said that he confessed to these murders to her, and this isn't the first time that she told the sheriff. So if you don't know, therapists can only keep so much stuff confidential to them. When you are either hurting yourself or others, they are, or you have been hurt by somebody else, they are legally obligated to call authorities. And she did. She called in and said that he confessed to killing these people, but again, it was just thrown under the rug and called it good. Like, the police at the time when she called this in didn't do anything about it. In March 2016, somebody was using a metal detector around a pond in the Keddie area where this was happening, and it went off and they found a bloody hammer with a blue handle. And this hammer is exactly the same as the one Martin describes that he lost that night. So the police kind of think that maybe this is the hammer that was actually used in this assault, and they threw another hammer in, like, that had no prints on it or anything like that, because they realized, you know, something was up, and they buried the one that actually had all of their fingerprints on it and all of the blood. But even with all of this evidence against Martin, they can't really do anything about it, because Martin and Bo Betty both passed away in about 1988 and between 2000, so they have passed away now. But the sheriff does say that they have 6 new suspects that are alive. Sheila is very happy with the progress that they are making on this case. She said that the police now are doing more than the police ever did at the beginning of this case when it first happened. She strongly believes that Martin did this. And just in 2018, DNA was found on surgical tape that was actually found at the crime scene, and it matches one of the 6 suspects that are alive today. The cabin that these murders happened in has actually been demolished because people were coming around, and it kind of became this big tourist attraction, and people, like the police and stuff, really didn't want that to be a thing, and the people around the Keddie community didn't really like that, so they ended up just tearing this whole cabin down to kind of stop people from coming in and out of this area for pretty much no reason, just to see this murder cabin pretty much. This case is still unsolved as I know of, But I really think that there could have been an arrest a long time ago. I really feel like they had so much evidence against Martin and his roommate that they really could have arrested them, but sadly they just covered it up because they were friends, and that's just the truth about it. Rather the old sheriff wants to say that's what it is or what it isn't, I really think that is what happened. Let me know what you guys think, and hopefully this case will be solved soon to bring some closure to Sheila and her brothers, Greg and Rick. But thank you guys for watching. I mean, no harm to the families and the people that I talk about. In this case, I am just putting information that I found on the internet into one video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you guys want to see next. Down below, don't forget to follow my social medias. They are all linked down below as well. I post on Mondays and Thursdays at 1:30 Central Time, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!